Welcome, folks, to another edition of Off Limits. Our guest today is the renowned historian Mridula Mukherjee, who all of us know, who is a voice we've been hearing for decades. She's an Indian historian known for her work on the role of the peasants in the Indian freedom struggle. She's an authority, really, also on the Indian freedom struggle. She is an ex-chairperson of the Center for Historical Studies at Jawaharlal Nehru University, and also a former director of the now maligned Nehru Memorial Museum and Library. So welcome, Mridula ji. Thank you for joining us and giving us time in this, particularly at this moment when you all are so busy. So let me just jump into it, because there is this controversy that we all know of. It's been there on the social media, it's been there on television, some of it also on the print media. Do you, in your innings as a historian and a well-known historian, ever recall a period where Indian history, even if it was for a shorter period of time, maybe if it was for a day or 2 days, when there was such an intense controversy over Indian history and what Indian history's facts and figures are?
Yes, I do recall, in fact. Yeah, because the story actually goes back a long time. There was the first round of this happened when the first Janta government came to power in 1977, and then the Janasangh, which had merged into the Janta Party, then got ministerships, information and broadcasting, and a couple of others, and they put pressure on the government then to go after the NCRT history books. At that time, even the full range of the books had not yet been written. There were just 2 or 3. But they raised the issue. But, one, they were weak. There were only a couple of them in the government. The larger body, there were socialists and others. So it wasn't such a powerful, the powerful concentration of resources that they had. And secondly, the atmosphere, the post-emergency atmosphere was a very open one, lot of debate, discussion. So in fact, there was a huge reaction to it, and all over the country there were protests. So it died down, so they gave it up. And then as soon as they settled down again in 1999 with the first NDA government, the onslaught started. And predictably, it started. In fact, nothing new ever happens, I find, in this country, especially with the BJP. It's all a script laid down about 100 years ago, and they just go on playing it. The RSS laid it down in 1925. And it's basically a replay of that we see down to the last questions and versions and interpretations. It's all there. If you just read your Savarkar and Golwalkar and a bit of Hedgewar, the whole script is right there. So in 99, again, they started predictably with deletions. And I still recall how from R.S. Sharma's book, they deleted again the same references to caste oppression. They don't want people to know that there was caste oppression, as if people can forget there was caste oppression because it's happening right before their eyes today. And yet it is the same story. Delete from medieval India, delete references from the freedom struggle. All the same pattern was there. Again, there was a loud protest. And in fact, all the major editors of the newspapers, etc., wrote editorials and all that. And there were a lot of meetings in colleges and universities and civil society. But they were very adamant. And Murli Manoj Joshi was very vicious. He called historians as academic, they are intellectual terrorists. And, they're worse than cross-border terrorists. And you should go and sort of virtually instigating groups of people to go and attack people like Ramila Thapar and Bipin Chandra and Satish Chandra and all that. So the atmosphere was quite bad then, actually. That's also the period when Savarkar was resurrected. We had the whole episode of the attempt to put the portrait in the parliament.
Yes.
And actually, those books were thrown out then. The books by R.S. Sharma, Satish Chandra, Robila Thapar, Bipin Chandra, Arjun Dev, the entire history textbook was thrown out, and new books were written and
Right.
put into place.
And then what happened? They were resurrected, they came back, and the new books went away, right?
Yeah, that's right. So then in 2004,
Yeah.
the protest has continued. And if I would like to remind you that this textbook controversy became an issue in the 2004 elections. I
Yes.
still recall Arjun Singh, who was then the education minister
Yes.
when he took office, talking about detoxification. He used that word. Veer Sanghvi had used the word Talibanization of Indian education. So pretty strong reactions had come then. And so then the Congress government, when they came in the UPA, they appointed a committee which went into it. Those books were removed. The older books were not brought back, but a new generation of books was then, a very big editorial board was set into place, and new books were then ordered to be written, which are the ones in controversy today.
Right. Right. So, when we go back to that period and remember parts of it and remember all of us writing about it, I think one very key difference was that the media was very free and the
That,
media was taking positions which
that
it is not taking anymore because the media is sort of, whether it's free or not, it's sold its soul completely. So when you have something as a powerful institution like the media, and I also include the column writers, the columnists, the opinion makers, etc., who write and who are part of this whole thing, the fight then against control of history or deletion of history, as we call it now, is much tougher, isn't it? Are you feeling that it's much tougher this time around?
it is tougher, of course. I mean, I think also a lot less people are speaking up from within the academic world, we find.
Yes.
There is an atmosphere of intimidation and fear because, all kinds of very punitive kind of measures have been let loose in universities, including the one where I taught for decades, the JNU. Teachers have really suffered. They've been denied pension benefits, they've been denied leave, they've been hounded, so
Yeah.
people have gone through a lot. So I'm not surprised that there is a tendency not to speak up, even though the feelings may be still quite strong. On the other hand, I want to say one thing to you. I find a difference between last year and this year. As the Indian Express pointed out, these deletions were actually ordered last year. Books were not removed, but they sent some kind of what they call an errata to
Yes.
all the schools, and they were told not to teach these portions. And Indian Express actually had done a 4-part series on its first page last April, I think it was. But there was hardly any protest. But this year, there is a much greater protest. So I discern some opening up, some
Okay.
little more, and some editorials have come in. Express, Hindu, Telegraph, of course, has been taking a very strident
Yes.
position on it. And I find even in the TV, a lot more debates with a lot more openness.
Right.
So while if we compare with the earlier period and now, there's a marked difference, but between last year and this year, I don't know. Maybe there's a little more resistance. The opposition is speaking up more. Maybe Rahul Gandhi's yatra made some difference. People started speaking up a little bit more. Elections are coming around. I don't know, but it's just a very instinctive reaction that I have
Okay.
to the
Right.
way I didn't expect, even frankly, I didn't expect this much protest.
Right.
And the other thing is that the foreign media is speaking up in a very big way.
Yes.
So there are
Yeah.
lots of articles coming in from all different, like the Times Literary Supplement. Pankaj Mishra has written a very good piece, which is generally attacking the government, not on this, but I mean, there's a kind of atmosphere which is critical of
Yes.
the government in power.
I think there's also concern about, in the manner, this kind of cherry picking of history, that you
Yes.
remove Gandhi's assassination, remove move out or delete some Mughal portions, all that. What does it actually also do for history? I mean, of course, on a lighter vein, you can see it on the social media where people are talking about who are the Mughals then, who did the Rajputs fight,
Yeah.
they vanquish, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is what does this do? Does it deny history? Does it change history? Or does
I
it do
think,
nothing at all?
well, as a historian, I think, the question you asked is a very important one and a very serious one. See, the trouble is that with all our protests and everything, what's actually getting taught to the children?
Yeah,
That child who's today studying in that particular class, from whose textbook passages have been deleted, chapters have been dropped,
yeah,
likely will never come back to that story. The number of people who specialize in history at the undergraduate level or college level, as you know, is already very low.
mm,
Generally, social sciences are not the preferred thing. It's all your engineering and medical, and at best, if they come back to sit for the UPSC, as many of them do, then they'll come back to history and take it up as a subject. So what I mean is that once they've lost that opportunity in their particular class where they are studying today, they probably lost it forever. So for the very ordinary everyday student
mm,
who's not going to go to elite institutions, who's not going to have an opportunity necessarily to engage as an adult with the more broader reading, this is the one chance that you get, to actually form a certain view of your past.
yes,
And I
absolutely.
think that's why, very smartly and cleverly, knowing that this is what matters in terms of the political agenda of the communal forces, this is where they focus.
Mm,
They are not messing with colleges too much right now, though they've put out a syllabus. There also, the Mughals have disappeared from the BA syllabus. So that's going to happen, and it's happening already. But they are much more concerned about what goes on at the level of the school, because they want to get to the mass of the people, and especially children who have no other way of really knowing about anything. Mass of our children. Let's forget those who are studying, in Delhi, in elite schools, where they have a chance of really a good education. Their teachers may make them into thinking beings, or they
right,
have parents who have an opportunity to give them exposure to the world. But think of the mass of our
right,
students, who in any case for them studies is about, studying and getting marks.
right.
Now if you delete portions, they're not going to bother or want to go to that portion which has been deleted.
So would it be, I heard somebody say this, that you don't have to delete anything, you leave everything is there. Why I'm bringing this argument is I remember that I was writing for a newspaper a long time ago, a column, and um, politically people intervene, and Vinod Mehta was the editor at that time, and they asked him to remove my columns and somebody else's. So he said, look, I've invited them to write. You can add your columns, but I'm not going to ask your columnists. I'm not going to ask people who I have
Mm.
invited to write. Now, is that an approach that you can bring to history at the moment, that you have what you have and then you can add to it?
The
Or
thing
is it inalienable? Facts are, extremely.
the thing is that it depends on what you're really trying to do.
Yeah.
If what you are really concerned about is that there are certain weaknesses in the existing books, which is the line which sometimes the NCRT takes. This time they're not even taking that line. The only line they're taking is COVID burden.
Yeah.
And we're only lessening the burden, which argument doesn't take us very far at all.
Yes.
Because then when other arguments come in about there are omissions and we need, so then that's not getting covered by omitting certain portions. If that is your objective, then either you have to revise these books or you have to get new books written or whatever it is. Then it's be a different level of argument. But actually speaking, what's happening now is that they, at the moment, this is the first step, as I said, they want to remove those parts which they see as dangerous to their ideology. Okay, so a positive assessment, an overall complex assessment of Mughal rule in India and the Sultanate. You don't want to learn about the Navratnas. You don't want to learn about Akbar Sulahikul. You don't want to learn about the architectural genius of the Mughals. You don't want to learn about music and art and this and that. You don't want to learn about the amity that existed at the level of the people. You don't want to know that the Rajputs not only collaborated with the British, but all with the Mughals, but all the time married into their families. You don't want to know that Jahangir had a Hindu mother and so did Shah Jahan. You don't want to know these things. You don't want children to get to know these things because then they have a different picture of the past, and that then makes them immune or at least resistant to the divisive ideas about quote unquote Muslims translate into Mughals that we want to put into their minds today. So essentially, you want to create a generation that's never been exposed to this side, this complex history of India, in which there is a lot of syncretism, there's a lot of give and take. It's not a simple history of conquest, conversion, oppression, tyranny. So they don't want that history to be told to the children, because then questions will get asked. Somebody will remember my textbook said this. Somebody will have a teacher who took off from that textbook and told them some stories. So it's to really prevent that they want to do this. And also, as they found last time, they brought in those new books. They were such bad books. Apart from being distorted, they were of such poor quality. They had so many errors in them, factual errors, that the History Congress brought out a whole book detailing those errors. And it was so embarrassing that the book actually could not have been kept on for much longer. It's not easy to write good textbook for children. It's not easy to write good history. It's not easy, even more difficult to write good textbooks for children. So it's not an easy job. So it's not so easy for them to just come in, and they've not even been able to write an alternative history at the scholarly level. Because they don't just have that, cohort of scholars that it needed to rewrite Indian history. There just aren't that many people on that side. So they're struggling, as I say, haath pe maarte rehte har jagah, sometimes coming up with one and Sankalan, Itihas Sankalan, 20 volumes they announce, but we don't see those 20 volumes anywhere. Not easy to write 20 volumes.
Right. So this is also, there's been this charge which you referred to, and which one keeps hearing, particularly of the independence struggle, the historians like you who write about that and have written and are experts on it, because obviously it was Congress dominated. So now the whole thing is you don't have the Northeast there, you don't have the South there. The historians who've written about India's freedom struggle are very Congress party influenced. They are not objective, or they are left. So how do you respond to this kind of vilification? It is vilification.
Well, first and foremost is just, I'd like to clarify that this is now factually just wrong. It's a lie. For the very simple reason that those who were vilified as the leftist historians, Robila Thapar, Bipin Chandra, Satish Chandra, R.S. Sharma, etc., their books were removed more than 2 decades ago. So who are you fighting against? This is shadow boxing. You are pretending that you're fighting against books which are not there. The books we are talking about now have been written by an entirely different group of historians. Now, no one person wrote one book as was done earlier. Bipin Chandra wrote Modern India, R.S. Sharma wrote Ancient India, like that. Each book on each period of history has been written by a group of people. At best, writing one chapter, sometimes two, in that book. So there's already a variety of people. Not one person have I heard identified in the last week or 10 days that this debate has been raging by name to say this person who's written this chapter in this book is pro-Congress or this. They don't even know the names of the people who've written those books. They are still fighting those old battles. Probably don't even know. I don't think those who come and talk about this actually know what they're talking about. They're given a script. And as you can see, each one of them repeats the same script.
Right.
Now they've been told talk about Northeast and South India being neglected. Please tell me how, with the deletions, you have added Northeast and South India. I'll believe you. So
Right.
bring out a book. If you think, firstly, you have to prove that Northeast and South India are neglected, which I say is a complete canard. It's not true. They're not neglected, you know.
Right.
Secondly, if they are, then you have to have a different argument, you have a different solution. Just
Right.
talking in the air about Indian historians in general, how is it relevant what we do or don't do? We are talking about the NCRT books.
Right.
Now, are you talking about what Indian historians do in general? That's a different story. Then we'll fight back at that level, and we can fight back very well because we've, as I said, done all that, been there 50 years ago. All the criticisms which are being made, South Indian history, Northeastern history, women's history, subaltern history, Dalit history, I mean, it's all happened. It's in the past. Please read.
Right.
Please take the trouble of finding out where Indian history has gone in the last few decades since independence. It's gone
Absolutely.
very far. You're nowhere near it. You're still fighting, as I said, those shadow
Shadow
boxing.
boxing. Right.
Yeah, only to fit into that agenda.
Right. So, when I'll make this the last question. I won't sort of trouble you for longer. But, when you spoke about the Mughals and all the various complicated, complex facts about that whole period of history, of them trying to deny that, when they remove a chapter of, say, Gandhi's assassination, then what are they really trying to effect? There's a bit of a difference that this is a shorter period, that's a much longer period.
Yeah,
And this is more contemporary. And so people and students will have access even to, if you Google, you will get the headlines of those days.
right.
There's enough on Google which tells you what has happened. There's enough in the newspaper coverage across the world that has actually spelt out that whole assassination, chronicled by those who I call the first drafters of history, which are journalists who
Yes,
witnessed
that's
this.
right. Yeah.
Uh, how does this work?
As I said, see, what they've done with the assassination story essentially is to just remove a few sentences.
Mm,
But those sentences are very telling.
mm,
One sentence which is removed is which describes Nathuram Godse as
yes.
the editor of an extremist Hindu newspaper.
Mm,
It describes him as somebody, and then the other sentences and passages talk about how Hindu extremists were very angry with Gandhi because they called him that an appeaser of Muslims. And
mm,
even for Godse, one of the sentences says that he accused Gandhi of appeasement of Muslims. It also says that Gandhi was very much against India becoming something like Pakistan. He wanted that if India should become a country of Hindus, it would be a disaster for India. So all these kind of sentences which refer to communal harmony, Gandhiji's ideas about that, and also predictably, there is a little paragraph which then talks about the sequel
mm,
to the murder,
mm,
assassination, and which says that the RSS was banned.
mm.
That, of course, is most undesirable.
Yes.
Imagine today children getting to know that the RSS was banned.
Yeah. And
And, and,
yes.
and also, what a powerful effect Gandhi's assassination had on the atmosphere, where it led to a complete disappearance of communal tension. Because there was such a sense of, guilt among people. And it was like that little paragraph describes all this. So, it's very interesting. All the positive things
Mm,
associated and the identification of who the assassins were. And
mm,
it's also, there's a line which says they had been angry with Gandhi for a long time and many assassination attempts had been made.
mm.
That's removed. So, though the sentences are few, but they are very loaded and powerful,
Right.
which give a kind of picture. And especially, I think the Gandhi assassination story is such an important story, which is why always an attempt is made to suppress the information relating to that. So this is the reason why there's always an attempt to put wraps on the assassination, always to deny that Godse had any links with the broader political formations. He is presented as a standalone extremist, fanatic, a sort of sirfira
Yeah.
man, who got angry and emotional because Gandhiji said, give this money to Pakistan. So he's presented as this guy who was out on his own. And all the evidence pointing to larger links, the conspiratorial aspects, the fact that the RSS was banned because very clearly they had, and as Sardar Patel said, an atmosphere had been created in the country where political assassinations were on the anvil.
Right.
Gandhi assassination was not the only one. It was a kind of plan. I mean, this is all there in the archival records.
Yes.
We've written about it, books are there about it, but it's denied in the popular sphere. And the textbooks have to be seen as part of that denial.
Right.
It can allow you to write a whole research work on the subject.
Right.
And keep quiet about it, but not in the school books.
Okay, so earlier, this is seriously the last question, but earlier you just said that you feel there's more resistance, you feel more people are speaking out today than they did yesterday. So how optimistic are you about history surviving this fresh onslaught?
Well, I'm not at all optimistic about the present regime or the present NCRT as it is constituted responding to the, because they can, as we know, they can be pretty acid about criticism and just, I mean, if the Adani issue does not make them flinch, where the whole parliament was washed out for one session, I mean, surely this is nothing compared to that. But I think what is important is, so as I said, the people may not be speaking up, but I am impressed with the amount of discussion that's taken place in this just a week and couple of days have passed. The first day we got reports was 4th of April. I can count at least, 24 or more articles. Historians are coming in, signature campaigns have happened, History Congress has spoken, major newspapers. I don't know too much about the Indian language press. It would be very important to see whether they have picked it up or not picked it up, but I'm not in a position to comment on that.
Right.
But certainly it's got the attention of the foreign media, which again, I think is important. This government does somewhere worry about its image, international image, and it's got very bad press on that. Mughals wiped out. Today also I saw a paper which it says, Mughals have disappeared. The Taj Mahal has disappeared. That kind of titles, catchy titles where the Taj Mahal as a symbol of the Mughal it's disappeared. So I don't know. I'm an optimist, eternal. We'll keep fighting and hope that another round will.
Right. Thank you so much, Mridula. It was very, very informative. And you tried to plug in many of the fallacies, etc. Thank you so much for giving us your time. Bye.
Thank you for inviting me to your platform. Thank you.